Whenever you want to start. Oh, you're on mute, Kim.
Good afternoon. This is the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission Executive Committee meeting. And I think we will start with roll call.
Can I do a quick
Do you mind if
housekeeping?
Dan does housekeeping and then I'll do roll?
Oh, you do? Yes, please.
Just for, pro forma. Welcome committee members, liaisons, and members of the public to the Executive Committee meeting of the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission. We're using Zoom with the goal of fostering a more inclusive environment and effective meeting. If you'd like to comment during the meeting, please use the raised hand feature. To use the raised hand feature by phone, dial *9 on your phone's dial pad to raise your hand, and do the same to lower your hand. Please utilize this tool to virtually indicate that you would like to speak in order to help the chair facilitate the discussion. Going forward, all LSTFC and committee meetings will be recorded and posted to the State Bar website. Friendly reminder that this is a video conference, and please be aware of your surroundings behind you. Troubleshooting tips: for those using Zoom on a computer, when on mute, holding down the space bar will temporarily unmute. If you use your phone to dial into this meeting, please be sure your computer's microphone is on mute to avoid audio feedback issues. When joining, audio via computer is highly recommended. If you lose audio, you can call in separately using the Zoom conference number. And I think that's everything on my list.
Great. I'll do roll.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, I'll do roll call now.
Okay.
Reines? Savage?
Here.
Schreiber?
Here.
Vanarelli?
Here.
Do we have quorum? So I'll do a liaison and staff as well. Selena Copeland? Lauren, are you attending on her behalf?
Yep, I'm here for Selena.
Great. Bonnie Huff? Danielle's here. I don't see Elizabeth. Brady, are you on?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then Dan. So Kim, I'll turn it back to you to do public comments.
Okay. So now is the time. If there anyone online that would like to comment, please let us know.
There's no one.
No one?
No, okay.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move right now into the substantive discussion. I'm turning it back to you, Tuan. Thank
Okay.
you.
So I'll do just a quick update on kind of where we are with the foreclosure grants, and then I'll turn over to Danielle, who will walk you through the scoring rubric and like substantively what we need to get approved today. So we have been continuing to have weekly, sometimes bi-weekly meetings with the California Housing Finance Agency, the agency that we are planning to contract with for the $12 million of foreclosure money. We have the contract. They have sent us the contract and the scope of work. It's in Brady's hands now to review. So we're hoping to have a quick turnaround. There's still several layers of internal review. It needs to go through OGC. It then needs to go, Rich and Kim will have to review it after Brady reviews it, as well as our executive staff. It'll go back to them. There are quite a few changes that we want to, technical changes, we think, not so much substantive, that we want to make with the contract and scope of work. So it's probably going to go one more round with them and then back to us. So I think on a best case scenario, it'll get signed next Friday, but more likely we'll probably need another week on that. It kind of depends on Brady's availability, and he's stuck in kind of board meetings this week, so he's probably not going to be able to turn to that until later in the week or next week.
Dwan, sorry to interrupt you before you go on. There's a Pete Bennett had just joined the meeting and the hand is raised.
Oh, okay. Is that okay, Kim? Should we take an hour? Do you want? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Could you introduce yourself to us, please?
Yeah. My name is Pete Bennett. I'm a resident of Contra Costa County. I am a litigant in primarily Contra Costa Superior Court. I have a lot of things to say and share with you. In July 2020, my attorney was Mark Angelucci killed. In 2000, my attorney's office was burned down. In 2005, another attorney was beaten up in Walnut Creek. In 1990, I lost millions of dollars in a courtroom because someone killed my 21-year-old witness and covered it up. My friends were killed in the plane crash in Santa Ana. My cars have exploded on the freeway. My children were taken from me without my consent. My family in Utah was murdered. My girlfriend was the one in the Amber Alert that changed the law when she was found brutally murdered with her daughter, and they called it a murder-suicide. I was instrumental in getting District Attorney Mark Peterson arrested. I got 30 years of losing in a courtroom and having my attorneys and witnesses murdered. I have officially 8 murders in my civil litigation. My civil rights consistently, repeatedly violated. I've been beaten up brutally in Walnut Creek and taken away in an ambulance 5 times.
Mr. Bennett,
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, I don't want to, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we have, we always give an individual an opportunity for public comment, but we limit the time to something that you're not going to be pleased with, but it's about 3 minutes. And so you've got about a minute left, and I just wonder if you could explain in the last minute why you are coming to the trust fund commission, since I mean we are not, our role is not as practicing attorneys on the commission, but we oversee the funding of legal services programs. So
well, that's part of the reason I'm calling is that.
okay, so let me just say that
I cannot
after
get access to legal, nothing.
Okay,
Zero.
okay.
All right.
All right,
They're
so yes,
my
if you could give us another minute, and then we certainly, you are very welcome to put comments in writing and submit them to the state bar, and I can assure you that they will be read. But for the purposes of our meeting today, we're, you know, a small group that is kind of conducting a committee meeting. So please take another minute, and then feel free afterwards to submit something in writing to the State Bar of California, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
I got plenty to say. You're
Okay,
going to find part of my comments on ContraCostaBarAssociation.com. I cannot tolerate another murder. I have 150 people killed. I'm tired. I have been misrepresented consistently for decades. Fix it before I die on the street, because that's what's coming.
okay, Mr. Bennett, thank
Goodbye.
you. And we will probably, we will certainly watch for anything you put in writing, and we can also check your comments with the Contra Costa Bar Association. I just want to make sure you understand what our role is on the commission, but I think we all heard you loud and clear, and I thank you very much for participating.
Hey, goodbye.
Bye.
So I was just saying, so the other update regarding the $12 million foreclosure grant is that we did have a webinar earlier this week. Danielle ran the webinar just so that we can let grantees, our grantees, know that this funding opportunity was coming down the pipeline. Danielle, do you want to share how many attendees there were and generally what kind of you discussed?
Sure. So we had about 52 or 54 register. I'm not actually sure how many attended. I don't know if Dawn or Chris kind of caught the number that we had live, but we had about 50 people register, and those 50 folks represented, I think 27 or 28 of our QLSPs and support centers. And during that webinar, we talked a little bit about the kind of background of where these funds were coming from, but then walked them through the grant parameters and talked in generalities around the scoring rubric and what they can kind of expect for that to look like, but with the clear caveat that it had not been approved by you all yet. But it really was an opportunity for us to explain the purpose and the parameters of the grant funds and give them a sense of the timeline, and that these application will be released next week and then due in May to get them to start thinking about what projects they might want to propose.
And then following this meeting, well, Danielle's already set up another webinar for next, I believe it's next week, to walk everybody through the rubric once you have approved it. And if there are any kind of modifications, then we'll unveil it for the community. So that's all my updates. Does anybody have any question? If not, then I'll turn it over to Danielle to walk you through the RFP. Okay, Danielle, it's yours.
Great. Okay, go in slideshow mode. Yes, so I will be walking you through today the RFP and the scoring rubric that was in the posted materials for today's agenda. And to get us to that point, we'll do a quick background of these funds and where they're coming from and why, the grant parameters as we've laid them out in the RFP, the timeline, the proposed scoring rubric that we'll ask for you all to approve today. There's two very small changes that I would recommend to the RFP as posted, so I'll walk you through those. And then just want to quickly talk about what the application itself will look like in Smart Simple, what the reporting requirements for these funds are shaping up to be, and then lastly, the scoring process for these funds, since it is a competitive grant opportunity. So as a refresher, the California Housing Finance Agency, or Cal HFA, received $945 million through the American Rescue Plan Act to launch a California mortgage relief program in response to the COVID pandemic. They set up a not-for-profit corporation called Cal HRC to administer the program, and the program primarily provides financial assistance covering past due mortgage payments for income-eligible homeowners who had financial hardships because of COVID. However, the authorizing activities include legal services, or authorized activities rather, include legal services and particularly foreclosure prevention legal aid services. So Cal HFA plans to subgrant $12 million to the commission and the state bar to administer as legal aid foreclosure prevention grants. And so those grants, the legal aid foreclosure prevention grants, would be open to all 2022 IOLTA eligible QLSPs and support centers. Again, it would be a competitive grant process, which is why we're looking at the RFP and scoring rubric today. The funds must be used on foreclosure prevention and home retention legal services, but lobbying is not permissible, and that is because they're federal funds, or a determination made by US Treasury. These will be 30-month or 2.5-year grants from July 1 of this year through December 31 of 2024. But because Cal HFA wanted to get these funds out as quickly as possible, we would allow grantees to claim expenditures back 1 quarter to April 1 of this year. They could use those funds to start hiring, for example, and kind of planning out their projects if they do ultimately receive an award. Cal HFA is allowing up to 8% of the $12 million to be for administrative costs, which would leave at least $11,040,000 available for grants, but any unspent administrative costs would be rolled into the kind of pot available for grants and would be dispersed to the grantees. And we're recommending that there be no minimum award amount and a maximum of $2.4 million, which is a bit higher than some of our other state bar grants, but that again is because we are expecting slightly fewer applicants for these funds than some of our others, and want to make sure that we can support really robust foreclosure prevention projects across the state and really use those funds as intended. And I see Dwan has her hand up.
Yeah, I just want to add, related to the administrative costs, we're going to build in one of the contract terms is that we have up to 8%. However, if the state bar doesn't use it all, then it'll roll back to programs, and that's something that we traditionally do with EF funding, and it's been kind of the office practice. If it doesn't get used, then obviously for us it goes back to programs. And this administrative cost, it includes broadly speaking, very similar to our JC contract. It will include like our staff time, overhead, and and Cal FHA is also agreeable to, if we need to do some statewide trainings for them. That's like less non-substantive in nature, but more of like to think about best practices and coordination piece. Then we can draw that from the administrative costs. So very, very broadly, they've been very flexible with us on what that can include.
Thanks, Dwan. So with these funds, there's a long list of permissible uses. It actually spans 2 slides, but the full list is in the RFP, and I'll walk you through it now. In general, these grants are able to support foreclosure prevention and home retention services for homeowners. And Cal HFA has indicated that this list is not necessarily exhaustive. There may be projects that programs think up that don't cleanly fall into one of these examples, and they're willing to kind of have a conversation about whether it falls into the grants, the program's kind of goals and objectives. But this is the list that we thought of both internally and with Cal HFA as kind of the list of what these funds could be used on. So that includes outreach and education on the California Mortgage Relief Program, the foreclosure process more generally, arrearage payments, and a homeowner's legal options, review of loan documents and counseling regarding the viability of loan modifications, assistance with loan modifications and denial appeals, negotiation, mediation, and litigation to address servicer violations or wrongful foreclosures, protecting home equity against judgment liens on consumer debts and addressing existing judgment liens, assisting with homestead declarations to protect equity against judgments, assisting with successor and interest issues, including proactive estate planning, assisting mobile home homeowners preserve ownership of their homes, including addressing issues with the mobile home parks that threaten home ownership, providing reverse mortgage advice to older adults, pursuing affirmative actions to restore homeowner titles, addressing equity stripping schemes and scams, as well as foreclosure rescue scams, addressing property charge issues, facilitating mortgage relief applications. And then finally, Cal HFA is also allowing programs to provide related ancillary legal services, such as consumer debt and bankruptcy legal assistance, as long as those clients, come in with a foreclosure prevention issue and there's a clear kind of link or nexus to their foreclosure prevention work, they can provide related legal services.
And just on that last point, Cal HFA has said that the staff can interpret that the ancillary services pretty broadly. And the example that we gave during the webinar is that if a client comes through and has, needs help with, say, a loan modification, but also needs to file like a restraining order, the program can use this funding to provide the assistance for the restraining order as well. There needs to be a more traditional foreclosure prevention illegal issue, but then that can be the hook for other related legal assistance.
Is that on a case-by-case basis? I mean, there's not going to be any parameters set out on that in terms of the linkage between the home ownership issue and something else in the person's life?
Yeah, they said that we can provide the TA, like if a program comes and asks us, but it is meant to be interpreted broadly. The one thing that needs to happen though is that client needs to have a live traditional foreclosure. So something on this list,
right,
and then they can add on something. So
okay.
They would be safe if the client is helping anything on one of these bullet points on the 2 pages, and they can add on something.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So one of the ways that this funding opportunity differs in some of our other state bar grants is that the income threshold is different here. With these funds, programs can serve homeowners with incomes less than or equal to 150% of area median income, which is calculated by U.S. Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, and they have a website where you can pretty easily select the state and the county, and it gives you what that number is for area median income for a home or household rather, based on the number of folks in that household, much like the federal poverty level does by household size. We did want to flag for you, and also flagged for programs in the webinar on Monday, AMI, or 150% of AMI will be higher than 200% of the federal poverty level in most, if not all, areas of the state. So grantees can serve non-indigent clients with these funds, but we would require that they track which clients are indigent and which are not, for the purposes of tracking their qualified expenditures. So this grant would cover any work for clients with a higher than that 200% federal poverty level income, but it would not count as qualifying expenditures for their IOLTA EAF applications. And then another grant parameter or feature of these grants that is different for programs is that Cal HFA and its subgrantees must spend at least 40% of the funds to provide services to folks from socially disadvantaged communities, and how Cal HFA in its California Mortgage Prevention Program has defined socially disadvantaged communities are those that are located in either qualified census tracts, which are also determined and shared by HUD, or areas of high or highest rating on the California Owner Vulnerability Index, or OVI, which is a measure that was created by the UCLA Center for Neighborhood Knowledge and isolates or defines areas of the state that are at the highest or highest risk of foreclosures based on a number of different factors related to like high level of housing costs and their housing burden, the amount of income they have left after subtracting housing costs, for example. There's kind of additional information on how they get to those ratings, but it's really trying to measure the areas of the state that are most at risk for foreclosures.
And it's a fairly sophisticated matrix. And what they said to us, if it's a numerical score, so if it's a 4 or 5 for the OVI, then the programs can count that.
Yes, so the 4 and 5 kind of map onto that high or highest. And so it's like lowest, low, moderate, high, or highest is your 1 to 5 scale. So 4 or 5 is the same as high or highest rating on that OVI measure. Yeah. Okay. And then again, we wanted to put the timeline in front of you all. This is the timeline that was approved by the full commission earlier this month. As Dwan said, we had the webinar this Monday for potential applicants, and that went really well. We're meeting today to approve the RFP and scoring rubric. We expect and anticipate to be able to release the RFP and the application on Smart Simple a week from today. And then applications would be due May 2nd, which gives programs, I think it's a little over 4 weeks to get those in. During the month of May, we would review applications, score them, and then the executive committee would meet again in June to approve the grant awards, which would give us time to then send grant agreements, process invoices ahead of that July 1 start date.
And I just want to add, if we have time at the end of the meeting, then we might want to pick that June meeting date. If not, then I can send around a doodle poll. The other thing is Danielle has been working with our online platform, Smart Simple, to already build out the application. So we have the shell of it built and we have it, a lot of language built. We'll make the tweaks depending on what you all approve today. And if you need to tinker around with language, that's fine. We can make those changes, but we're geared up to be able to release that next week on schedule.
Yeah, there's kind of a full application in Smart Simple and ready, but certainly have the time and flexibility to make changes to it based on our conversation today. So before I put the actual scoring rubric chart on the screen, I wanted to talk a little more generally about the rubric and how we drafted the proposed rubric in the RFP. The structure is very similar to that of partnership grants, PLL grants, and the HP3 grants, and that was an effort to promote predictability and consistency for grantees. We also, where possible, use similar terminology and definitions to the streamlined rubric categories that the Rules Committee has recommended. We recognize that that hasn't been approved by the full commission yet, but wanted to get into the office practice of using consistent categories where possible. And so we made those edits so that this rubric reflects that. There are a couple categories that are specific to the Cal HFA funding, however. One of those being Cal HFA asked that we have a rubric category on evaluating programs' outreach strategy to program eligible low-income homeowners, evaluating their ability to identify and educate those folks about their services. There's also a category on a focus on socially disadvantaged communities. So that looks kind of like past categories on focus on rural communities or focus on underserved communities, for example. The difference being, though, that with these funds, programs have to serve socially disadvantaged communities. At least 40% of their funds must be used on socially disadvantaged communities, but they could, of course, use more. And this evaluation criteria is really just ensuring that they're being thoughtful about identifying and prioritizing those communities that they need to serve with these funds. And then finally, the special consideration category for these funds also was something that Cal HFA staff were excited about, a focus on serving traditionally underserved populations and or populations disproportionately impacted by the COVID pandemic. And that was specifically because the American Rescue Plan Act and the California Mortgage Relief Program was really built in response to the COVID pandemic. That's kind of the underlying goal. So they wanted us to give preference to programs that demonstrated a focus on serving those folks particularly. And as with many other grant funds, we would propose that the rubric be a tool to guide evaluation and our funding decisions. Scores, though, would not guarantee funding, and the committee would be able to exercise discretion to make awards that fund a variety of interventions and services, and also fund projects throughout the state.
And on this last point, if I just add, this is really important to Cal FHA, is actually in the contract that the commission strive to make kind of grants across the state. They explicitly have said to us, they do not want a concentration of grants. And the example they used was Los Angeles and San Francisco. They really want the spread. So even though within those communities, there might be areas that are socially disadvantaged, they want us to take a broad stroke of looking at it statewide.
Yeah. And that, I should say, is also part of the reason the, if I tab back, the special consideration also says traditionally underserved populations, not just those disproportionately impacted by COVID. And that was to sort of also get at, there are portions of the state that, as you all well know, have much less coverage for legal services. And that was kind of the types of populations that they were envisioning folks might get special consideration points for serving. So I recognize this text is a little small, so I will of course read it to you. But several of these rubric categories should look pretty familiar. They're very similar to those on other scoring rubrics we have. The first being project impact. The applicant proposes a project that significantly and directly addresses or will address a compelling need for the particular foreclosure prevention and home retention interventions. And that would have a maximum of 30 points available, 25 for meet expectations and 20 for below expectations. And then of course a 0 if it's not addressed. The next category is administration, which is very similar, if not exactly the same as categories that we've also called organizational capacity in the past. The applicant would need to demonstrate that it has the qualifications, experience, resources, and or partners that it needs to meet the proposal objectives. I will say for these funds, there's not the explicit focus on partnerships that we've had with the HP3 funds, for example, but Cal HFA has indicated that programs are welcome to work with partners, collaborate, and have sub-grants as part of their proposals if they wish.
And oh, sorry to interrupt you, Danielle. I was going to say this, as Danielle was saying, in the past iteration of HP grants, it was called organizational capacity. The reason why it's called administration here is because the rules committee, that working group, even though that's not codified yet, want to move towards naming it administration instead of organizational capacity, but substantively it's the same category. Yeah,
and I think partnership grants already calls it administration too. And so, yeah, like Dwan said, substantively, it's the same as organizational capacity. We're just trying to simplify or make more consistent and streamline our terminology. That would be worth up to 20 points, 20 points for exceeds expectations, 15 for meets, and 10 for below. And then we get into a couple of the categories that are specific to these grant funds. The first being outreach strategy targeting low-income homeowners. The applicant details a thoughtful strategy for identifying, targeting, and educating program eligible homeowners about the proposed legal services. And again, program eligible homeowners would be those with household incomes less than or equal to 150% of AMI. And then the next is a focus on socially disadvantaged populations. The applicant articulates a particular focus on serving socially disadvantaged communities, those located in qualified census tracts or areas of high or highest rating on the California Owner Vulnerability Index. And the reason that highest here is in a different color font is that in the posted materials, it says high or very high ratings. But in going back and talking with Cal HFA and looking at the vulnerability index again, I realized that the terminology they use is high and highest. And so just to be consistent, I would recommend that we make that small tweak in the RFP. That also would be worth, I'm sorry, both of those would be worth up to 15.
Is she frozen for everybody else?
Yes.
Yeah, she froze. So I thought it might just be me. She might need to log in and log out.
Can I ask a question while we're kind of
Sure,
on
of
hold
course.
here? Or is she back?
Yeah,
She's back, okay.
Sorry
I'll
about
hold my
that.
question.
no problem. Oh, did you freeze again, Danielle? Okay, there, you're back.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I don't know if it was an internet issue. Zoom just closed out completely.
It happens.
Yeah, my computer is saying my internet connection is unstable. So I will share again and we will hope that it holds on. Sorry about that. So I'm not quite sure where it dropped off, but we were talking about focus on socially disadvantaged populations. And again, if it wasn't captured earlier, the reason this is a different color is because the California Owner Vulnerability Index calls it high and highest is kind of how they name those categories. And in the posted materials, it said high or very high. So I would just recommend that we change that terminology to be consistent. Very small tweak, not a substantive difference, but just making sure we're using consistent terminology. And then evaluation is a category that we have on many other scoring rubrics. And that is the applicant details an evaluation strategy to acquire data that it can use to refine the project strategies over the course of the grant to increase its effectiveness. All three of the categories on targeting low-income homeowners, focus on socially disadvantaged populations, and evaluation would be worth up to 15 points for an exceeds expectations, 10 points for meets expectations, and 5 for below. Was there a question? I think Kim referenced she had a question.
Kim, do you still have a question?
Yes, my question was really, has Cal HFA viewed this yet?
Yes.
Okay.
So we sent them a full copy of the RFP as the posted version that was shared with you all as well.
Okay. And then my only other comment was under special considerations where you have the parentheses at the end.
Yes.
I would like to see individuals with disabilities included within that as an example.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's an important group to specifically call out.
Okay, I think that's great. And I'll change that blue so we know it's a change and make sure it's reflected in the proposal or the, I'm sorry, the
Yeah, thank you.
resolution language. Yes, so the special consideration category would evaluate that the applicant articulates a focus on and demonstrates a history of serving those traditionally underserved populations or populations disproportionately impacted by the COVID pandemic. And the reason why "and" is a slightly different color here is in the posted materials that says "or" demonstrates a history of, and upon reflection, it seemed like giving special consideration points for demonstrating a history of, but not necessarily serving in this project, those populations was not what we intended. If this said or, and then somebody expected points for simply demonstrated a history of serving those groups, that did not seem like the intended result. And so I would recommend that we change that or to an and.
And I had sent out, before we posted the materials earlier in the week, a draft of this where it didn't have the special consideration category. And then Danielle and I and Chris met with Cal FHA and we walked them through this, and this was added. So the posted version, there was two versions that were sent to you. The first version didn't have the special consideration. The posted version did, and this was at the request of Cal FHA.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that, Dawn.
And I don't believe Rich is here, but I did want to bring up something that Rich brought up through email once I sent out the draft version. He thought that it was peculiar that administration was higher than evaluation. And we explained to him that it's because we were trying to stay consistent with what HP, the last HP score rubric, as well as what the working group for codification did. But I did say to him that we should talk about it since he raised it as a point of concern.
Yes, we, with this scoring rubric and other scoring rubrics, try to have the kind of maximum point totals equal 100, just because it's pretty clean, both for us internally and for programs. But there's nothing saying, as I understand it, that they need to equal 100. And we're certainly want to hear your all's feedback on whether the kind of weight of some of these should change.
And I'd say the working group rules committee, they had the categories, but they actually didn't have like numerical numbers attached to it. So we could still stay consistent if you wanted to tinker around with the weight of these categories.
Yeah, absolutely. The rules or the working group is recommending that committees have the discretion to change kind of the weighting of categories as they see fit, but recommended consistent definitions of those categories that are found across scoring rubrics.
Was there any preference expressed by Cal FHA?
They did not explicitly express a preference. We walked through it with them with this weighting, and they didn't have any concerns or objections, but they didn't also explicitly say that administration should be higher than evaluation.
My sense is they would feel comfortable if you guys felt strongly to tinker around with the numbers. I presume what they would like to stay pretty consistent is the special consideration category and the outreach and focus, but obviously they know our protocol and that the commission has the ultimate authority to approve. So if you guys choose to like tinker more with it or modify it more, I think they would be fine with it too. But yeah.
So Rich and Dwan and I discussed this when Rich brought up the weighting, and my perspective on this was that as a first-time grant with Cal HFA, that the administrative portion, I still think of it as really, the operational strengths, as being very important, and that the evaluation less so as a new grant. And then I think I suggested that maybe on quarterly reports there could be a question, really kind of a self-reflection, self-assessment question put to the grantees at just like a brief evaluation that would go on quarterly. My main concern is that these funds are used really well and can demonstrate that there is the organizational capacity. And we don't have Rich here, but that was specifically his question about why the weighting on that.
Okay, well, we can of course come back to the rubric and change the weighting if you all feel like we should, but I'll continue forward and give you guys some time to think about it, and then perhaps we can come back to the scoring rubric before we work on the resolution. But again, I have a couple small changes that I would recommend to the RFP as posted. The first being that the relevant OVI categories are actually high and highest vulnerability on their website rather than high or very high, which is what it currently says in the RFP. And I propose we change that just to be consistent. And then also, as I mentioned, I would recommend that the special consideration category wording be tweaked slightly to say that the applicant articulates a focus on and demonstrates a history of serving traditionally underserved populations, et cetera, which the rest of that is, or those disproportionately impacted by the COVID pandemic. So as Dawn mentioned, we are in the process of building out the application on Smart Simple. As much as possible, we tried to make it look like our other applications, other competitive grant applications, and particularly HP3, since those are also federal funds. The first page asks for high-level information about the counties that would be served, the requested grant amount, any current funding if the project is pre-existing, as well as a project abstract and a DUNS number, which is a like ID number for organizations that receive federal funds. It's a way that the federal government tracks federal expenditures. So any programs receiving federal funds will need a DUNS number. They are free to, it's free to get a DUNS number, register for one. We'll provide TA to programs that don't already have one. The next page is project description, which is really kind of the meat of the application, if you will. It asks for detailed information about the needs, clients, resources, goals and activities, deliverables, and then strategies for outreach, accessibility, and evaluation. The questions specifically about how they will perform outreach to program eligible homeowners and how they will target and provide outreach to, or prioritize services to socially disadvantaged communities is on that page. Also in the question about their kind of resources, goals, and staffing, it asks about their experience serving traditionally underserved and or disproportionately impacted communities. The next page is the project budget, which asks how they propose to allocate the funds across the 30 months. Again, we recommend a maximum of 2.4 million. There also is a project budget narrative, which is just another table in which they, for each line of the budget, tell us explicitly kind of what they're spending that money on and itemize where appropriate they're spending. And then finally, there's project assurances where they agree to kind of several of our grant terms and agree that they will spend the funds on foreclosure prevention services as outlined in their application and so forth. The project assurances will look very similar to what it looks like for our other grants. And then the reporting requirements for these grants. Grants are supported by federal funds, so they will require quarterly and annual reporting on services and expenditures. It also will require programs to file a single audit if they spend $750,000 or more in federal funds in 1 year. State Bar staff will attempt to mirror the HP3 reporting as much as possible, again, to try to make it as consistent and easy for programs as possible. But we do know that there are going to be some specific requirements for these funds, and those will include needing to report their spending on services to folks in socially disadvantaged communities, since that's an explicit grant requirement. And Cal HFA has also requested that programs report the amount of mortgage payments at issue for the clients served. And just to let you know, we're continuing to work with Cal HFA to clarify and finalize the reporting requirements. So this is a section that will kind of continue to take shape over the next couple months. And finally, the scoring process for these funds. Staff recommend a scoring team be used to review all applications. And we would recommend that that scoring team be made up of 2 to 3 State Bar staff and at least 1 commissioner, so that we have that commissioner voice and input. The scoring team would score all applications and make award and funding recommendations to the executive committee to be discussed at that June meeting. And as Dawn mentioned, that still needs to be scheduled, so we may be able to do that today.
And Danielle, Chris has had his hand up for a bit.
Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't see that.
Anyways, just a few slides back, you listed that on the application will ask for the DUNS number. So I just learned this yesterday afternoon, and this was announced on March 18th, which was like a couple days ago. I'm reading this from a federal, the sam.gov federal website. So starting on Monday, April 4, you can no longer see or use the DUNS number. The new unique entity ID will be the official government-wide identifier for all federal awards. So I think the federal government within the last couple of days has announced that it will be transitioning from something called the DUNS number to the unique entity ID number. So I just wanted to flag that if that is true, we would update the application to request the appropriate federal identifying number for the programs.
Chris, is this that sam.gov that number?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I don't think that really changes anything, but Danielle, maybe for like the application question itself and on the RFP, we might have to make that change.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, I had not seen that yet. Okay, I think that is the end, yes, of my prepared slides. So at this point, I'm happy to take questions or tab back to the RFP.
I think maybe back to the scoring rubric. That's usually where there's the most discussion.
Yes.
Or tweaks. Are there questions or comments, modifications? We'd love to hear it all.
I only had one comment, which is just, you know, it's like really amazing how much money is passing through this commission at this point. I mean, I on the one hand, it's great. On the other hand, it's just a lot of work. I hope like we're able to keep up and get everything that we need, and that is very much the royal we. So I hope staff is getting what it needs, because I know this is just a ton. As it turns out, it seems like all the rubric work really sort of worked pretty seamlessly, at least to get us the skids greased here. But whew, I'm just sort of amazed at how much money and grants and work is pouring through the commission at this stage.
I mean, I agree with you, but I also see there's just been this incredibly fast, I don't want to call it just a learning curve, but like a figuring out curve in terms of these. So, I mean, I think the staff has made it possible to take on more of these because of the structure that they have created with incredible thought and carefulness. So, I mean, to me, it's just, when I look at this now, I go, I'm fine with this. This is great. And so I don't want them working zillions of hours, but I do think that the structure that they have created to move forward with more grants is just, it's really hopeful. And I know the programs are thrilled.
I guess on the staffing side, we do have 4 new staff coming on the month of April, and we've already got approval to use our admin fees to post for one position specifically for this grant. As soon as we ink the contract, like we can go and post it, and that'll either be a program analyst or senior program analyst, and that'll work alongside Danielle and Chris to administer this. So that's going to be potentially 5 new staff total, with possibility more to come. But you're right, Chris, the amount of money that's coming through the commission, and you know, Elizabeth and I were kind of looking back on like how much this office has grown. I mean, we have doubled the amount of staff in 4 years, and that's still, there's still more of an uptick. So it's kind of incredible. the amount of work that's coming through.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of behind the scenes. I mean, just building out the application. Danielle's been working with like a team of 3 behind with the technology piece. We have our whole finance team, not our internal finance team, which, you know, is led by Michael and Heidi, but then we have to coordinate with the state bar's finance team to make sure cost centers, everything's coded as soon as invoices come in. So it really is a big production. It's the entire team that gets one grant like this up and running.
Yeah, I mean, I want to acknowledge it, you know, I just think that was my only real point. It's just, I know how much work it is and how hard those legs are kicking under the surface, you know.
And we recognize on your end, I mean, you've had now, and this is the second added executive committee meeting, and then we're gonna have to add one more. So yeah, on the flip side of that, the we is definitely a capital we in terms of the amount of work that we're all putting forth.
Well, I'm hearing no further edits to the scoring rubric. So I will move us over.
Oh, can we go back to that one slide before, because we need to talk about the one commissioner or 2, and I should say it's probably executive committee member is to be more specific, that would like to help participate, because what I heard from the commission was like, even though it wasn't in their motion, that's what they wanted, is at least one committee member to help with the scoring team. But if I'm inaccurate in what I heard, please.
That was my understanding as well from the full commission, but it was not in the resolution, as you said, Dwan.
I mean, I was kind of the person who was pointed to as doing it if you guys felt was necessary, and if no one else wants to step forward, you know, I will do it.
Okay.
But I want other people to consider the opportunity.
Is it possible to put this call out to the full commission?
Yeah.
If it's not, because I think, you know, I mean, my observation is that Kenny's taking on a lot. And I guess ultimately, I think it might be helpful to have somebody shadow you. So that maybe these opportunities could last for someone else.
Well, I do think I think that's a nice idea to have a second person outside of the executive committee, so that somebody else kind of learns from the opportunity, and maybe the full commission feels that the process is a little more inclusive and not just limited to the executive committee. So I'm very open to that. I mean, I will do what the group wants to do.
That's a really
I just didn't hear a lot of people jumping for the opportunity.
I think that's a really good idea. My only question then is, what if multiple people volunteer? Then who decides? Is Kim, we're happy to have you decide, but we just need to decide that now. So there's no question.
I feel like that could be decided just in a conversation. If in fact multiple people are, you know, stepping forward.
I mean, I guess the other possibility is for us to think about someone who might have some of the background to be working on this. In other words, we go to someone and ask if they would like to do it. I don't know. What do you think about that, Christian?
Well, I mean, I'm thinking like this is an opportunity for someone to actually develop a little bit of background as opposed to somebody who has it. So I guess I'm thinking that it might even be advisable to have somebody who's truly a neophyte sit in and sort of watch how it all happens so that they can then take it on. I mean, that sort of was my thinking, so that they'd have a little bit more confidence, not only about subject matter, but about process, without necessarily the pressure of having to like know all the answers the first time through. It's you know, hours of commitment but it's not. But so, that's what they're signing up for, I guess.
I like the idea of doing that. I think we've got a lot of new members. We're going to have more coming on. And I think that we could strengthen and increase our mentoring opportunities. I like the idea very much.
Me too. I really like that because you're right, Chris. It does end up becoming like a few people that have the time, and we turn to them and they have developed this expertise, and it's nice to, yeah.
If more than one person wants to participate, then perhaps they could each take a share, and you could have more, more broad participation.
Mm-hmm.
That's
true. I guess if I mean, there does come a point where it becomes unwieldy, but I think if there's like two, then I think that's fine, and also doesn't subject us to bag looking. We just we don't want to have to notice the meetings because then it becomes more work for the staff. But I think, right, Brady, two, it's not a majority of any of the committees, so that should work.
He's gone.
Oh, he's
Oh,
gone.
no, he's not. No, he's not. Hi, Sam.
You see him? Okay.
So it sounds like they would be making decisions. So if there's
it's still going to come back to XCOM to decide.
Okay, then it would be
it's like a working group.
Yeah, then it would be fine.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Is there a possibility? Do you all envision a situation where nobody steps forward, and then in that case, what is the solution?
Somebody will.
Okay.
I think somebody will.
I'm sorry. Just to go back to that. The caveat would be it can't be whatever the group is. Can't be more than. Actually, do we have 4 members here?
Yeah.
Okay, so it could be 2, even 2 from here.
Yeah, even if it's 2 from here, we don't hit it.
Yeah, because that's exactly 50%.
We're talking 2 total.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
2 total. Yeah. Okay. So we'll send out an email then this week to solicit, and then we'll just keep you all updated via email. Like if there's that off chance that there's 0, then hopefully 2 people from XCOM will step up. And if not, then if there are 2 from the general commission, then Kim, I think it sounds like you're off the hook then. Is that what I'm hearing? Or if it's 1 from the larger committee commission, then plus Kim? I just want to make sure that we're all in agreement, or no? Christina's shaking her head. No.
I'm thinking no.
You're thinking no, Kim, at all?
Unless there's 0 from the commission that will
I thought it was the shadowing part. So if there is 1, then it's still no, Kim?
Oh, I see what you're saying. I don't know. I just feel kind of bad for Kim.
Okay.
I mean, I'm okay with doing it, but with 1 other person. But what I would like when you send out the email to make sure that people know what they're getting themselves into in terms of, the commitment for additional time.
How about we draft something? We'll run it by you, Kim, because you have a sense of how many hours and stuff like that. So we're accurate.
Okay. I mean, I view it as a mentoring opportunity.
Okay.
So.
No, I really like the idea. I think this is a great way to get more people engaged, and like having larger community feel comfortable, because there was a little bit of a discomfort in like naming 1, and it wasn't Kim, but it was just naming the 1 with the staff. So yeah.
Okay. So in looking at the resolution, I want to make sure we add that special consideration will also include people with disabilities. Let me just pull the language from here. Or sorry, perhaps we'll do this. Populations disproportionately impacted by the COVID pandemic. Purposes of scoring, special consideration will also include with disabilities. Should this be not just populations disproportionately impacted by COVID, but the full traditionally underserved populations?
I think so. Right, Kim, is that what you're envisioning? Both?
Yes.
Great.
Thanks, Danielle.
Of course. And then do we need to make adjustments to the resolution to reflect the scoring team decisions as well?
Do we need to say that, Brady, explicitly, that the scoring team will be inclusive? No, right, because it's a working group. We don't need a motion on that, right?
No.
No.
So I'm just trying to make this look consistent. Great. Okay. Are there any other, I'll read this out actually first, and then I'll ask if there are any additional changes. Resolved that the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission Executive Committee, acting on behalf of the Commission under its delegated authority, approves the request for proposals, rubric, and distribution plan for the 2022-2024 Cal HFA foreclosure prevention grants as described in staff's March 23, 2022 memorandum to the Executive Committee with the following changes. References to very high ratings on the Owner Vulnerability Index will be edited to highest. Special consideration will evaluate applicants' focus on and history of serving traditionally underserved populations and or populations disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And traditionally underserved populations and or populations disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic for the purposes of scoring special consideration will also include people with disabilities. I'm just going to put quotes around this so that is abundantly clear. But are there any other edits that folks would recommend or like to see?
And Rich has just joined us. Hi, Rich.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Danielle, I don't know if you need to address the DNS number.
Yes.
It seems like to the extent that they're adopting the RFP as written, that might necessitate a change in the resolution.
Well, and usually you don't, when you adopt it in concept. So I think that's
okay.
fine. Right, Brady?
Then you probably won't need it. It's yeah.
Because sometimes we need to tinker with the language to make it a little bit more clear, or because how it's built on Smart and Simple.
If it's permissible, we could just consider that like a technical correction to like the new verbiage the federal government is using to capture that idea. Yeah.
Okay. Do we need to then say in the resolution that it's an approval in concept, or is that understood?
I've only said orally before, Brady. You've never had a problem, so is that fine? And then now we have this motion.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we're all here on this call that it's hard to have an answer to that because it's whatever the commission, whatever the executive committee wants to put in their resolution, and I think it's understood that these technical changes are typically made in practice. But if there's any lack of clarity from either staff or the committee's perspective, then you can address that.
I think for staff, it is sufficiently clear, but if committee members feel differently, I'm happy to make it more explicit in the resolution.
And the recording certainly reflects at this point that this was raised multiple times and everyone knows that this change will be made. So
great. Okay, then Dwan, I think we're ready to take the vote.
Yeah, so Kim, I'll hand it to you if you want to solicit a motion.
Do we have someone to make the motion?
I will, Christina.
Great.
And a second? Christian?
Christian second? Is that, did I hear
Yes.
that? Okay,
Yes.
great. Okay, do roll call then. Rhinus?
Rich?
Rich, is that a yes? Sorry, you cut for a second. Okay, great.
Rosen?
Savage?
Yes.
Schreiber?
Yeah.
Vanarelli?
Yes.
Great, motion passes.
Great. Thank you all.
Right, should we, do you want to take a couple minutes and pull out your calendar, or would you like, prefer that I send a doodle for that June meeting?
Do you want to, do you have dates you want to propose to us now?
Yes, June 13th. Does that work in the morning, like 9 to 11 or 11 to 1, or even actually in the afternoon, 1 to 3, we're free that day. That would be our preference. If not, then we can go later in the week, but we do have a commission meeting on the 17th.
You said the 13th?
Yeah, the 13th. The 14th also works in the morning. The 15th also works in the morning.
13th works for me.
13th works for you?
Me also.
Yes.
Would you all prefer in the morning or in the afternoon?
Morning.
Morning? Do you want to say, oh, we should do a 3-hour meeting, actually. I don't think we'll need it, but just in case. So 9 to noon?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great. Rich, does that work for you? Sorry, I didn't hear.
The 13th doesn't work for me, but if you meet at 9 in the morning, I'm not sure. I will. I prefer the 17th, but if it's the 13th, I'll do what I can to make it.
Well, the 17th is our commission meeting, so we definitely can't do the 17th.
All right, then we'll leave it as is. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Danielle.
Okay, I think we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Bye.